I'm going to take you through some pitfalls and the lessons, really, that I've been able to kind of discover, really, through my own experience, but also through the great job that I have back in the UK, which is just meeting wonderful, inspiring social enterprise leaders. And they share with me their successes, but many of them are also candid enough to share with me some of their failures and some of the challenges they experience. I know some of them will be familiar to you. Some of them won't be unique, but I hope that this provides, for those of you embarking on a social enterprise journey, some kind of notion of the journey that might be ahead and some of the ways to avoid some of those big challenges. So, first of all, I think it's wise to say that anyone running a social enterprise is a leader. And I think this quote is brilliant because it says really that to get into social enterprise, you have to have a fairly poorly developed sense of fear and no concept of the odds against you. That's true of any business, but when you're running a social business, the complexities can be even more challenging. So well done for the brave in the room that are already on that journey and doing incredible, impactful work across this island. The first lesson that I'm going to share with you is when you start your journey, always make sure that you are surrounded by radiators and not drains. Okay? Who's worked in an environment that's full of drains, people that suck energy, that always tell you it's not going to work? I can see some hands going up. The first thing you need to do is surround yourself with people that share your vision. Because it's so easy to find people that will drag you back and hold you back and limit your opportunity to achieve great things. So first of all, I think ditch the drains. All right? Ditch the drains and find people that share your values, your vision, your passion, and your ideas. I also think that part of that lesson is also around understanding who you are. And I think social entrepreneurs tend to be incredibly optimistic. Here you can see a turtle lying on his back, and rather than feeling as if he's stranded, upside down, he thinks actually, oh my gosh, I'm flying. And then you can see Captain Optimism facing Pessimistic Man. I will defeat you, he says. And Pessimism Man says, yep, you probably will. And I think it's really, really important, actually, to be optimistic. But optimism will only get you so far, because you also need to be a realist as well. But whilst you're thinking about optimism, pessimism, realism, I love this quote. While you guys were busy arguing whether the glass was half full or half empty, I drank the water. You're sincerely the opportunist. And therefore, I think the other thing you need to be is an opportunist. So you always need to just be thinking about, you know, whilst you're having those debates and those conversations, make sure those opportunities don't just pass you by. Because it's so easy just to lose those opportunities. That young man found out a tender, the one that asked the question in the last session, found out about a tendering opportunity only a few weeks ago and was opportunistic enough to kind of put a bid together and a business plan together and go for it. And unfortunately, it seems like he might have been defeated by a bit of the old bureaucracy that often hangs around. But we've had those conversations and you've not lost your optimism, have you? You're going to still achieve what you want to achieve, and you're going to find new partners in this room that have those 3-year set of accounts, that have got those businesses registered for more than 3 years, that are going to help you get a tender, even if your business hasn't been registered for 3 years. And that's what I mean about being opportunistic and being optimistic. But I think also, you also need to be a realist too. The second one, I love that picture on the left. I think they're not my relatives. This is around diversity. There's always a challenge, and in any walk of life, that it's easy to recruit people and work with people that remind you of yourself. People that you have things in common with, whether that's the same age, whether that's the same experience from the same community, whether that's the same faith, whatever it might be. It's human nature to surround yourself with people that are almost a little bit like yourself. And in business, that can be really dangerous, because actually diversity is really, really good. And I'm not just talking about, you know, having a mixed board of black and white people on it, or men and women, or someone that's perhaps got a disability. I'm talking about a diversity of thinking, different approaches and different skills, not just age difference, gender and race. I'm talking about people that have different skills from you, different perspectives, different ideas. Sometimes, you know, particularly common is that we can kind of dismiss the enthusiasm of youth. We think, oh, well, you know, youthful enthusiasm, but what do they actually have? We've got the experience. Young people's jobs can be clearing up or making the tea, not actually sitting around the board table. But today's businesses rely on things like social media. And if you want your business to engage with social media, then you need to engage with young people who have been brought up as digital natives, that have iPads and iPhones attached to them as if they were born as part of their bodies. And actually using these skills and these different experiences from people's different perspectives and experiences is really, really critical. Diversity actually works for business, and here's 5 reasons why. Because it actually reflects the real world. The real world is also diverse. Something every business should be sensitive to. Your clients and your customers are diverse. And so a diverse workforce will build relationships with a diverse range of customers and stakeholders. And you can play people to their strengths. You know, sometimes it might be that, you know, you've got someone in your organization that is better working with, for example, your local bank manager or your local building society. Maybe it's someone that actually needs to go and engage with young people on the streets. And actually, you know, I can't do that anymore. I'm not down with the kids as I once was. Right? You might think I am, but I'm not. So actually, it's been a really, really interesting tool. When I was engaged in youth work back in the UK, actually employing young people that had those experiences of either being in prison or being homeless, that actually had that genuine empathy, was critical in building trusting relationships. You can't expect me to go out to Trenchtown and be trusted by the local community. You need people that have that empathy, that understanding, that experience, so that you can build those relationships. And those relationships with the people that you're trying to serve, but also the customers and the other stakeholders and partners that you need to work with. Healthy debate can lead to better decision making. What you don't want is a group of people that all just violently agree with each other. Yes, 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 we all agree, it's a great idea. You actually want people that disagree and say, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And that's why a diversity of different people in your organization can really help produce much, much better decision making in much, much shorter time periods. You can thrash out those discussions in a healthy way and arrive at a better product, at a better price, at a better sales strategy, at a better marketing strategy, at all sorts of things. And divergent backgrounds mean tackling the same problem in very, very different ways. You know, sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees, and therefore, again, having that diversity of people in your workforce can really help see different solutions to problems that previously weren't obvious. And great ideas come from disruption. We heard yesterday about the great disruptors, the revolution of disruptors that are emerging in economies right around the world. The social entrepreneurs are leading that disruptive force in business. And actually, it's really, really important that you have people that aren't just the same as you to help that disruption occur. And of course, the world is full of change, right? It constantly is changing. And again, that diverse workforce can really, really help your organization adapt to changing circumstances, whether that's the loss of grant funding, or what happens if all of a sudden the price of mushrooms crashes. You know, you might need to adapt and produce something else. And therefore, having that diversity of experience and skills and ideas can lead to all sorts of new business opportunities and help that process of adaptability. 3, who's on your bus? So who are you taking with you? You're going to be on a journey. You're going to be driving a business forwards. Are you the bus driver? Are you the one that's deciding on the strategy and the vision, and you're setting that direction, and you're all coming with me? Or are you the conductor on the back of the bus, telling people where to sit, collecting their fares, organising the people on the bus? And I think so often, you know, when we think about who we need to go on that journey, we think, right, what staff will I need? But actually, on your social enterprise journey, it's really, really unlikely that you're only going to take staff with you. You're going to take partners, you're going to take funders, donors, mentors, investors, champions. You're going to need all of these people. So think about who are the individuals, what organizations do they represent that you need to be on that bus in order to embark on that incredible journey. And of course, once you've got the people on the bus, it's also really important to make sure that they're in the right seats. I've come across people before that have been in, like, you know, you might know from, or you might remember from yesterday, I've run some catering social enterprises, and I've had people working in the kitchens. And they were working in the kitchens because perhaps they came to us and they didn't have, at first sight, many skills. So put them in the kitchen, because in the kitchen you can learn the skills to become a great chef. It's only been over a matter of months, maybe years, that actually we've realized that those people have other skills that we didn't necessarily acknowledge or appreciate. And rather than force them into the kitchen to make food that they don't really like making or they're not interested in making, they actually have a whole set of skills that can be deployed elsewhere in the business with much, much greater impact. And again, sometimes if people aren't, succeeding in a job, it's because they're in the wrong job. It's not because they can't succeed. So finding the right role to meet the skills of the people that you're trying to work with is absolutely critical. And testing things out, giving people an opportunity to try a bit of time working in administration. Some people love admin. I hate it. Some people love finance. I hate it. But there are people out there that do like numbers, that do like figures and like paperwork. And actually, they come in all shapes and sizes. And actually, someone that's working in your organization, maybe as a domestic cleaner or maybe as someone working in the kitchens, might actually be really, really capable. So many women have to manage household budgets. So many women have financial skills, budgeting skills that can be really, really useful in a business. But just because they're not an accountant or they haven't come from that profession doesn't mean that they don't have great opportunities to demonstrate their skills in those roles. So as well as taking the right people with you on your journey and making sure that they're radiators and not drains, and making sure that your team is diverse in terms of ideas and aspirations and viewpoints, it's also important to make sure that their skills are identified and that you've got them in the right roles, because that's really going to help your business succeed. 4, how do you know that people want to buy your product? Now, here are some really, really bad products. This is a pasta up here called Only Puke. This is a pasta. These are all genuine products, ladies and gentlemen. I kid you not. We've got chocolate biscuits called Plop. We have some peanuts called My Dad's Nuts. I'm not even going to ask you whether you want to eat My Dad's Nuts. But sometimes people have this great idea. They're convinced that absolutely, they're bang on. They know what's going to work. And actually, they haven't done any market research. They haven't tested their ideas. They're all working on enthusiasm and an idea that they're always right. And actually, we can get things remarkably wrong. You won't be able to see this particularly well at the back, I think, because probably some of the lights up here. But someone even developed a toilet roll that was printed with rashers of bacon. And again, all of these products have failed. Fruit juice called Terra, and the beer, well, let's not even go to the beer there. But the world is full of good ideas that just collapse. So best to avoid them, best to do your homework, do a bit of market research, and ask around, test your ideas. Don't just assume that your ideas are right. And the best way to do that is by involving your intended customers in the product design. It's something increasingly that large multinationals are doing. It's something that social enterprises have been doing for years and years and years, actually involving their customers, their beneficiaries, into the heart of the organization, into every aspect of it. But increasingly, companies like Nike are testing new trainer brands out in places like the favelas of Brazil to see whether they go down with the young, cool kids living in those communities, testing out the products before they go to market to make sure that they think that they're cool. Because a white middle-class executive based in New York isn't necessarily going to know what's going to sell well in Kingston or in Trenchtown or in Brazil or anywhere else in the world. So actually taking products out and testing them and making sure that there's an appetite and there's a market for these products is absolutely critical. And it doesn't have to be a big scientific, expensive process. It involves pulling a few people together, showing them your product and asking them what they think about it. Can they see flaws? And if they tell you that they don't like it, don't get angry with them. This is your market research. This is valuable. Don't be frustrated if people tell you that they think your idea sucks. Because if people think your idea sucks, I think you could save a lot of time, energy, and potentially money by listening to them. This is a really, really good slogan. I talked yesterday about actually recognizing and accepting failure as part of the journey. If you're going to run any business, you're going to fail at times, and things aren't always going to go well. The trick, though, is to fail cheap, fail quick, and fail often. Fail at the early stages of your business, not when you've invested thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, even if they're just Jamaican dollars rather than US dollars. Save yourself that time, that cost, and that expense. Fail cheap, fail quick, and fail often. If you do that, you will learn. And I've always said this, and I know that Claire and many others in the room that have experienced failure and success will recognize that you always learn so much more from failure than you ever do from success. Those hard knocks are the making of you. You come out of it stronger. You come out of it with more determination to succeed and with those critical lessons that will stay with you for the rest of your life. I told you, didn't I? I hope, and I know there are some new people here today, but I had a community cafe. It's what my local community wanted. And of course, as a social enterprise, we tried to make it cheap and affordable for our customers. We tried to make it highly ethical, so it was fair trade and it was organic, and it was made by a team of young people, some of whom had learning disabilities, some of whom have just come out of prison. And so the training of those people was quite costly, and selling that kind of proposal in a community with no money was never going to make sense. And actually thinking that just opening more cafes was going to be my route to success wasn't. All I did was scale failure. And that's a really, really bad error too. So fail early, learn the mistakes, and kind of move on. Pretotype it. This is an early Palm Pilot. And actually, the Palm Pilot is gone. Does anyone have a Palm Pilot anymore? Does anyone remember a Palm Pilot? Long, long, long ago. Anyone under 18? You'll have still been in nappies. But pretty much, the idea of pretotyping is one stage before prototyping. So when you prototype a product, you kind of build it up and you kind of test it, but in a fairly developed phase, in a fairly developed state. Pretotyping it is knocking it up really, really quickly and cheaply. It doesn't even have to function properly, but testing its look, its design, seeing what people feel about it, seeing if its functionality, even if it doesn't work properly, explaining its functionality and seeing how that goes with people is a really, really good way to test things out before you actually start investing in a product or whatever it is, a service that doesn't actually work. And there's a free book that you can get as a PDF by this author, Alberto Savoia, called Pretotype It. Make sure you are building the right it before you build it right. And that's just making sure that your assumptions about the product or whatever it is you're building, the service, the business that you're building, is right at a very, very early stage. That allows you to adapt, to change, to reconsider things. Is this going to work financially? Do we need to change that a bit? When I built the Sunlight Centre in Gillingham in Kent in 2000, initially we were going to just fill the entire building. It was a large, large building with loads and loads of really, really good community stuff, things that people wanted to use for free on the whole. And when you realise that you've got to start actually paying for building insurance and receptionists and security cameras and caretakers and changing the light bulbs and toilet paper and all that kind of stuff that a building requires, you start actually thinking, can we afford to make all of this space available just for the community? Or do we need to perhaps build in some income centres into this building, give away a bit of our space, and actually generate rent as a way of generating income to make the whole thing sustainable? It would have been easy to just build a building and fill it full of good stuff. The critical thing was to fill it with a mix of good stuff and income-generating stuff so that the building could still be there today, still serving the community and not close after the grant funding had ended. So pretotyping it, thinking it through, working out the model, the income models, the revenue models is really, really important. And then getting the service right is really, really important. And I love this. This is someone that's really clearly pissed off. They've been to a restaurant, and what they've done, they've got the ketchup and the mustard bottles, and they've squirted onto the table. We waited 30 minutes, no service. So even if you've got the most beautiful restaurant, the most beautiful cafe, and you've got it all sorted, unless you are treating every customer as if they are the most important person in the universe, then you're not going to have any customers. And I just think that's a great, great reminder. And if you're ever bored with service in a really rubbish restaurant, I would encourage you to do the same thing. It's a great way of giving feedback. Lesson number 5. Okay, what's your price? What's your cost? And what's your profit? One of the key pitfalls is that, social entrepreneurs are full of enthusiasm and creative energy. And we want to change the world, and we want to do this, and we want to do that. And boy, do we hate numbers and paperwork. And actually, it's really, really important, because a business will only be sustainable if the money coming in is greater than the money going out. And that means having to know your sums. And I know it's tough, but it's just critical. One of the things that I'm going to kind of share with you is that I used to hate finance people. Because they always say no. They always say there's no money. They always say, oh, it's Peter again, wanting to spend more money. and actually learn to love them because they can be your best friends. As long as they share similar values, get used to people saying, caution, be careful. They don't have to be drains. What they have to do is be informing you, giving you the information. You don't have to be a finance person, but you need someone on your team working with you as a volunteer. You know, it might be, as I say, many single mums have to balance tight budgets. They know more about bookkeeping and balancing budgets and planning finances than many accountants. So find people that have that knack of understanding money in and money out and keeping a handle on that, because it's the one thing that kills virtually every business. Every business failure is basically down to a problem with the numbers. Because as long as you've got more money coming in than costs going out, then man, you're in business. It's as simple as that. I'm going to play a little game with you, because this is a game that I used to do when I used to train people about running community cafes, for example. And it's the cost of the coffee in your cup. So when we think about like selling anything, we have to break down the kind of the costs. So give me an idea. What's the most expensive component when someone sells you a cup of coffee? Coffee. It's never the coffee. It's never the coffee. It's always the person making the coffee over the counter. Labor is always your greatest cost. There's not so much profit in coffee when you factor in the labor, the rents, the tax, the teaspoons, the milk, the sugar, the coffee, the labor, all of the things, the staff uniforms, the licenses, the rent on the property, replacing material and equipment, capital costs. Your water boilers will disappear over 5 years, they'll break. Your cups will break. You've got to replace the seating, the flooring. You've got to find light bulbs. You know, there are so many costs. So a simple thing like a cup of coffee seems like it's like a no-brainer. But actually the hidden costs, the fixed costs, the variable costs, all of the stuff that you have to plan for, training people, recruiting people, marketing. No one mentioned marketing. All these things have to be budgeted for in your 300 Jamaican dollar cup of coffee. And then measure, record, measure, report. And we touched on this yesterday, you know. The days of just being given a whack of money, go and do some good stuff with my money, have gone. So you now have to account for it, and rightly so. And you have to measure things, right? You have to measure. And it doesn't have to be complicated. There are some really complicated approaches. So we were talking about SROI yesterday, social return on investment. That scares a lot of people, and rightly so. You don't need to worry about SROI just yet. If you're operating at scale, you might want to think about these complex or more developed or more evolved approaches to accounting for your social impact. But when you're starting out, don't overcomplicate things. Make things simple. How many people have you trained? Out of those people that you trained, how many have gone on to get jobs? How long have they kept those jobs for? I mean, these are simple things to count. How many people have come in to use your service? What age, what profile, where have they come from, what community, what neighborhood? This kind of information is the information that increasingly you're going to be needed to provide and report on in order to justify what you do. And I'm not going to go too much on kind of social accounting and impact reporting, because fortunately we have an expert with us who's Claire, and she's going to be running a session this afternoon on it. But it really doesn't have to be complicated. Yes, you have to kind of measure things, and you should get into the habit of building it into the DNA of your business. Not see it as some sort of burden that you have to do right at the end of a project, or when someone asks for the information, you have to track back over 6 months and collate it all. Just build it into the fundamental approach of your business, how you account. Even keep records of your customers, keep records of how much they're spending, their average spend, because information is power. And with information, you can do lots and lots of stuff. So in a cafe environment, using that example again, what's really interesting is you can have 100 customers. But if your 100 customers are only spending 300 Jamaican dollars with every purchase, then you've got a problem. But if your cafe can only hold 100 customers, then what are you going to do? What you need to do is build that average spend. You need to increase the amount of money they're spending with you. If you've got no more room for any more customers, you need to find ways of encouraging them to spend more. And that doesn't mean exploiting them. That means finding other things that they want that you can sell to them to build that spend from 300 US to 600 and then 700, and keeping an eye on what the average spend is and how many people are using it, at what times. And if you've got times where people aren't coming in, how can you fill that empty space, that capacity? Can you do special deals on a Monday morning when people aren't coming in? And not offer those deals on a Friday lunchtime when it's heaving. There's all sorts of ways to do it, and you can't just do it off instinct. You need to have an evidence base for your own benefit, but also for those people that are investing in you, that want to know about the social impact that you're creating. So get used to not just looking after the financial numbers, but the business numbers as well, because they are really, really important for you to help grow and understand what's working and what's not in any business. So, I'm part of the same message really around reporting and keeping track of what's happening is storytelling. Storytelling is incredibly powerful. A number of people said to me that after Becca's story yesterday about her organisation with the candle making, that they were really touched and they were really moved. And Becca shared that some people are willing to spend, $5,000 on a candle if they're moved by the story of how she's working with people that have been trafficked, people that have been on the streets in prostitution, in addiction. And so telling stories is really critical. And if you can't do anything else in terms of your business, get the stories of the people whose lives you're affecting. Get them to write them down. If they can't write them down, record them, video them. There are different ways to capture the impact that you're having, and it doesn't all have to be data and numbers. Maybe stories are just data, but with a soul. And people are moved by stories. Those who tell stories rule the world, said Plato, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago. When did Plato live? Does anyone know? 3,000. No, it was kind of on the mark, almost. So 3,000 years ago, Plato said that, and it's true. Lots and lots and lots of social progress has been made by the telling of stories. Whether that's the stories coming out of South Africa about people like Steve Biko, whether that's stories of the women's movement in Britain in terms of getting people to get the vote, getting women to get the vote, it's often come through partly the role of storytelling. Lesson number 7 from me is, the pitfall that I'm going to share with you is most social enterprises, particularly those that have come from the social sector, that are finding their way into business, are terrible at selling. They're a bit shy about selling stuff, right? Oh, asking for people for money, I don't really like doing that. Forcing my product on someone, it doesn't feel right, it's not ethical, I can't do it. How many trading social enterprises do we have in the room? Put your hands up for me. 3, 4, 5. Can you keep your hands up if you've got someone dedicated to sales? Okay, about half, maybe a third. That's pretty good. What we do find is that in the private sector, every business has people involved in sales, because that's what generates money. In the social sector, what we find is that most companies go, oh, it's all of our roles. We all do a bit of sales. We don't really have a dedicated sales team because we can't afford it. You can't afford not to have it, I would argue. You need people to go out there and sell your product, because that's what will bring the revenue that will allow you to do the impact that you want to do. So selling is a really, really, really important part of the whole kind of social enterprise journey, and it's traditionally something we do badly. Shy salespeople tend to have really skinny kids. You're not going to make any money if you're a shy salesperson. So overcome that. And this is where actually building the team, going back to those earlier lessons that I shared with you about who's on the bus, do they have the right skills, is really, 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 really important. You need to have someone that's charismatic, that's outgoing, that's willing to go up to strangers and willing to do the deal and actually close the deal. And sometimes that isn't always your chief executive. Sometimes that might be your chief executive, but your chief executive might also need someone else to help and support them. And I think a lot of young people love the idea of going out and selling and earning money. And finding people in your communities that have that knack, have that cheeky knack of making money, of convincing people to buy stuff or lend them money or stuff like that. They have real skills. And good salespeople are hard to find because, you overdo it and you put people off. You need to do it with charm, with humor, with grace, but you still need to do it. And finding the people with the right skills to sell this is critical. And sometimes it's not just selling the product, sometimes it's just selling the idea too. Number 8 is a one customer business is not a business. So there are lots and lots of social enterprises that just have one customer. And that might be government, it might be a public body or a public authority, it might just be one corporate customer. And that's no better than really having just one grant funder. because that one customer can decide to go away at any time that they choose. And actually that makes your business very, very vulnerable. So the perfect notion is this kind of picture, where you have a queue of different customers all queuing up. And if one of them gets fed up, if one of them moves away, if one of them dies, you know, it's not the end of the world. Well, it is for them, but not for you. That's the most important thing. Sorry, that came from nowhere. That was not rehearsed. So my point being really is that you cannot rely on just a couple of customers to maintain your business, because it will be very, very vulnerable and very, very weak. And in the UK, we have lots of social enterprises that do just have one customer, and that is the government. And an election can be called, a government policy can change, a minister can change, a minister can be sacked, and all of a sudden that relationship can go cold immediately. And a business without a customer is not a business at all. So really diversifying your income generation from a multitude of different customers. And that can be a mix. I think the healthiest mix is to have customers that want to give you money through grants, customers that want to give you money through buying your products and services, and perhaps government customers that want to procure contracts and services from you. And that's a really healthy blend. So if any one of those customers decides to disappear, you have other customers that can maintain your business until you find others. And it's just about building resilience into your business. And lots of social enterprises, they'll get one big contract from government and think that's it, but that's not it. You've got to keep on working, you've got to keep on trying hard to find new customers that you can engage with. And that also means diversifying your product range. You know, that does mean innovating new ideas. Just because all of a sudden you've found a brilliant market for soft teddy bears doesn't mean that that's where you should stop. Where else can you go? What other products can you develop within the skills that you have within your team? I've been given a 10-minute warning. And there's another really salient lesson to remember here. Satisfied customers tell 3 friends. Angry customers tell 3,000. So in terms of your marketing, you really need to get the customer service right, you know? Those people that spread their ketchup and their mustard all over their table, I'm sure took a picture, it went viral over Twitter. You know, I don't know whether that business would ever recover from that sort of experience. So it's really, really important to think through having as many customers as possible that are not only as many and as voluminous as possible, but are as satisfied as possible as well. And sometimes that means accepting, despite the fact that the customer is not always right, that the customer always has to leave satisfied, even if they're wrong. You have to find ways, even if you can't agree with them, even if you can't resolve their complaint, that they go away feeling as if they've been listened to, respected, understood, that you have empathy with their problem, and even if you can't resolve it, you try and end all relationships amicably. But great customers will come back time and time again. So try and build your satisfied customers, and at all costs, really, avoid angry customers, because they do huge amounts of damage to your business. And this, for me, is a really critical picture. And I think if there's one slide that you should take with you, this is probably one of the most helpful ones. So this is where we want to be. We want to be up here, in the middle of the star. This is where we've got profit coming in, and we're on mission. We're achieving great things because our sales are going well, our income is high, and our mission is as high as it can possibly be. The problem is sometimes, and I think, you know, many of the social sector organizations, is that your impact is up here. It's the heart. It's absolutely doing wonderful things, but you've got no income to continue to do it with. And the worst, also here, this is not good, this is almost acting like a private sector organization, where your profitability might be great, but your social mission is not being achieved, it's really weak. So you've got to get to that sweet spot. And if you ever find yourself in this corner here, just stop what you're doing, hold a crisis meeting and go, not only are we off mission, we're not making any money. We need to rethink our business plan. This is clearly not working. And the great thing to do is to achieve to get to where the star is, where your impact is high and your profitability is high, and that's where you will continue to grow. You'll be touching people's lives, you'll have more money to do more good stuff with, and your business will scale and achieve wonderful things. Your staff will be happy, they'll be proud. Lesson number 9 is simply be excellent. You know, business is tough and it's competitive, and you have to be good at what you're doing. In fact, you have to be excellent at what you're doing. Refuse to be average, let your heart soar as high as it will. That's a great notion. Just because you're a social enterprise does not allow you to be rubbish at what you do. You still have to be great. You have to provide good customer service. You have to provide a good quality product at a competitive price. You've got to provide good quality customer service. You've got to deliver on time. Your product has to be consistent. And this is all difficult stuff to get right, but it's absolutely crucial. And when you are succeeding, and when you are excellent, there is no room for modesty in business. So celebrate your success. Now, don't go ego mad. Remember, it's about what you're doing. It's not about you. You know, don't celebrate yourself as a superhero going into communities and transforming them. You're not a superhero. You're running a business. You're a business leader. You should be proud of what you and your team are achieving together. And when you are achieving, go for awards. Recognition is wonderful. It gives people certainty in your product, in your quality, in your business. It gives you the recognition, not only to you, but your staff team too. And Claire has won many, many, many awards as a fantastic award-winning social entrepreneur. And when she wins those awards, the impact it has on the staff, on the community, is massive. So don't be shy when it comes to trying to get the kind of the gongs and the awards and the certificates and the statues. That means something. It's a stamp of credibility that will give your business a boost. So also make time in your business for thinking about where you can get those kinds of accolades and that recognition. And then the 10th final lesson, and that's around your own leadership style, which is critical. This is the lion from The Wizard of Oz, and the lion needed courage, and I think, you know, you have to be courageous in leadership. Business is about risk-taking. It's not about being silly with risks. It's not about taking silly risks. But if you're going to grow a business and you are going to succeed and you're going to adapt to a changing world, then you really, really, really definitely need to be a courageous and trusting leader. Trust your people and be courageous. Oh, and on here, Blink. The book Blink is also a really, really important lesson. Now, Blink is a book by Malcolm Gladwell, The Power of Thinking. And what Malcolm Gladwell says is that sometimes, as a leader, we have to operate on instinct. And it's okay to do so. Trusting yourself and thinking you're making the right decision, going with your gut instinct, is sometimes a good call. Because a gut instinct isn't just a gut instinct. A gut instinct is the mind processing very rapidly thousands of pieces of information that you've absorbed from all sorts of places, helping you to make a rapid decision when you need to make a rapid decision. When you've got that gut feeling, it isn't coming from somewhere up in the heavens. It's coming based on all of the information that's acknowledged, that's been received into your brain, processing it very, very rapidly to help you make the right decision. So when we have to make a decision in an emergency situation about whether we fight or whether we run, that's also part of an instinctive approach that our brains are taking us through. You're taking in millions of bits of information, absorbing them, assessing them, and going, if I knock this guy out, well, have I got a chance, or is he going to flatten me? I better run. 9 times out of 10, I run. And it's normally the right decision to make. But it is about that instinct that you get isn't about cowardice or bravery. It's as much about the brain processing all of those bits of information, taking it all in and helping you to make a very, very rapid decision. Of course, not every decision should be taken like that. At times, when you have the time, you know, you bring in other people's views, perspectives, you make a really considered decision. But at times in business, you are called on as a leader to make a decision rapidly, and therefore you have to lead. And the difference between a boss and a leader, well, I think this is a good one. A boss drives employees. A leader coaches employees. A boss depends on authority. A leader depends on goodwill. A boss inspires fear. A leader generates enthusiasm. A boss says I. A leader says we. A boss sometimes blames for breakdown. And a leader fixes the breakdown. A boss knows how it's done. A leader shows how it's done. You know, are you above cleaning the floor, wiping the tables, making tea for your staff? You shouldn't, because this is showing how leadership and how business can and should operate. It's not about you being at the top of the tree and people serving you below. It's actually about being with the people. A boss uses people, a leader develops people. A boss takes credit, a leader gives credit. A boss commands, a leader asks. And a boss says go, a leader says let go. I love this. I think this might have actually been taken in somewhere in Jamaica, just because it says God bless one love. It might be an assumption, it might be wrong. But if you are unemployed and need an outfit clean for an interview, we will clean it for free. I love that notion. Business can be kind. There is nothing weak about taking kindness into business and finding ways, new ways, to help people in your community. And simple gestures, like supporting people. This is going to be a great marketing tool for that business. People are going to talk about that business. Have you seen what they're doing for unemployed people? It's going to drive custom to your business. Sometimes being nice, being kind, being gentle is the greatest business tool you can have. Building those relationships, building that trust within your community is a great way to build customer loyalty. And remember this, that management is just doing things right. It's process orientated. But leadership is doing the right thing. And you can define what the right thing is within your community. If you follow those lessons, I can't guarantee that you'll achieve success, but I certainly hope that you will. Always remember, in any business, change is inevitable unless it's a vending machine. Thank you.